Claire, filled with compassion, invites Jack to stay at her house, believing she's simply helping a man in need.
Don't worry, you can stay at my house until you find work.
But one night changes everything. Walking past the bathroom door, Claire sees him in the shower and the shock paralyzes her.
Wow.
What should have been a simple gesture turns into an intense and irresistible conflict. From a very young age, Claire Robinson knew her heartbeat differently. Perhaps it was the environment in which she grew up, or the way her parents raised her, but for as long as she could remember, her life was intertwined with nature and the living beings that inhabited it. Living in the quiet suburbs of Chicago, in a house that always seemed full of life, Claire felt a deep connection with everything around her. Cats, dogs, and even injured wild animals brought by her father from the clinic filled the Robinson home. For young Claire, these animals weren't just creatures, they were companions, friends who needed love and care. Her mother, a nurse, always said, "The world is a better place when we offer our care to others, Claire." And those words were engraved in the little girl's mind. She watched her mother every morning, putting on her white uniform with a soft smile on her face, ready to face another day helping people. Her father, a veterinarian with a heart as big as his love for animals, taught her that all lives have value. Claire observed him caring for cats with broken legs, abandoned dogs, and even small injured squirrels that he brought home, always hoping they would survive and return to nature. These experiences shaped Claire in a unique way. From a young age, she knew her future was tied to those who couldn't speak for themselves, animals. She spent her afternoons in the garden, accompanied by playful dogs and lazy cats. While other children played with dolls, Claire created her own animal hospital, where each stuffed toy was treated with the same care she saw in her parents as they cared for living beings. "I want to be like you when I grow up," Claire would say, while watching her parents dedicate themselves to others. There was a depth in her words that, although coming from a child, already carried the seriousness of someone who knew what they wanted from life. But it wasn't just animals that fascinated her. Claire also had a keen eye for the nature that surrounded her. When birds sang at dawn or a gentle wind moved the trees, she felt an internal peace, an inexplicable connection. It was as if nature spoke to her, showing her how precious and fragile life was. As she grew, that connection became stronger, leading her to decide that her future would be dedicated to biology and the study of species. However, while Claire grew up surrounded by love and care, in a distant African village, Jack faced a very different reality. "Please, I just need one chance," pleaded the young man, approximately 30 years old, with determined eyes. He was standing before a local merchant, a robust man with sun-weathered skin who was slowly shaking his head. "I'm sorry," replied the merchant, with the heavy expression of someone who had denied that same opportunity to many others. "Times are hard. I can't afford to hire anyone else." The young man lowered his head for a moment, trying to hide his frustration. He was tall, with broad shoulders and strong arms, signs of a life of hard work, but his face showed the marks of repeated disappointments. His brown eyes, which once harbored the hope of a better future, now reflected the silent struggle he faced day after day. Without work, without prospects, and in a village that barely offered what was necessary to survive, he felt the weight of each closed door. "I understand," muttered the young man, trying to maintain his composure. He turned around and began walking through the dusty streets of the village, his boots resonating slightly on the arid ground. The scorching sun didn't bother him as much as the oppressive silence around him. As he walked, he observed the simple houses around him. Each window, each door seemed to tell a story of hardship, of lost dreams. Children played on the dirt ground, laughing, oblivious to the struggles of adults, while women carried baskets of fruits and vegetables, working hard to support their families. There was a raw and natural beauty in the village, but also a melancholy that seemed to permeate it. A feeling that, despite the constant struggle, hope slipped through their fingers. Jack continued his walk, with his hands in the pockets of his worn-out pants, his thoughts mixing with the distant sound of birds and the wind. "What do I do now?" he thought to himself, feeling a knot tighten in his throat. He was young, but already felt defeated. There was an overwhelming sense that time was against him. The more he tried, the more it seemed life pushed him back. As he passed by an ancient and robust tree that stood in the center of the village, He stopped for a moment, observing its leaves swaying gently. That tree had already seen many winters, many droughts, but it was still standing, with deep roots that gave it strength. He breathed deeply, trying to find a fraction of that resilience within himself. But reality was harsh, and he knew he would need more than strength to continue. His eyes, which once vibrated with ambition, now carried the weight of uncertainty. He continued walking, without a clear destination, but with the silent wish that something, anything, would change in his life. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Claire grew up with a clear purpose. The young woman, still shaped by her loving childhood, felt there was something more for her in the world, something she needed to discover. Her passion for animals guided her, and she knew her destiny was beyond the borders of her hometown. Claire always knew her passion for animals would lead her to explore the world in a profound way. After years of dedicated studies, she graduated in biology with a specialization in environmental conservation. Throughout her career, she remained focused on a single goal: the preservation of endangered species. Her focus had always been Africa, a continent rich in biodiversity and home to some of the most threatened species on the planet. When Claire presented her project to her boss, an ambitious plan to study African wildlife and understand the dynamics that were leading to the extinction of certain animals, she knew she was taking a big risk. It wasn't just a research trip, but also a personal search for purpose. For her, that opportunity represented much more than just a scientific study. It was the opportunity to reconnect with what gave her the most meaning: nature and animals. After several meetings, the project was approved, and Claire began preparing for her trip to Africa. Excitement mixed with anxiety. She knew that by setting foot on that soil, her life could change forever, but she didn't yet know how. As she said goodbye to her family and friends, Claire carried with her a mixture of expectations and doubts. Would she be able to deal with the challenges she would face? The plane landed at a small airport in the heart of the African continent. The heat was palpable, a dense wave of hot air that enveloped her as soon as she left the plane. Around her, the scenery was different from anything she had seen. The sky was a deep blue, and the horizon seemed to stretch forever, interrupted only by small villages scattered across the vastness. Claire took a deep breath, feeling the smell of the earth and the distant sound of wild animals. The village where she would stay was simple, but rich in culture. Children ran through the dirt streets, laughing and playing, while women carried water jugs on their heads with a grace that fascinated her. The local market was full of colors and aromas, exotic fruits, dried herbs, and vibrant fabrics that danced with the wind. Claire felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized the cultural immersion she was about to enter. "Claire, this is Jack," said her local guide, introducing her to a man who, at first glance, seemed a notable contrast to the scenery that surrounded him. Jack was a man of approximately 30 years, with short hair and an expression that mixed seriousness with a certain sadness. He was standing under the shade of a large tree, with his hands in the pockets of pants already worn by time. Although it was clear that he was going through difficulties, there was something in his posture that set him apart from others. He had a reserved dignity, a notable presence that immediately caught Claire's attention. "Pleasure to meet you," he said with a rough but polite voice. Claire smiled, a little surprised by the intensity in Jack's eyes, which seemed to contain the stories of a life full of ups and downs. "The pleasure is mine," she replied, trying to hide her initial discomfort. She didn't know exactly why, but something about that man intrigued her deeply. Over the days that followed, Claire began to get used to the rhythm of the village and the life that surrounded her. Her studies with animals were progressing, and she frequently found herself with Jack, who had offered to help her. Although he didn't have a formal job in the village, he demonstrated a deep knowledge of the region, knew the best places to observe species, and even helped Claire interact with local hunters who helped her approach wild animals without causing disturbances. "Have you ever thought about leaving here?" Claire asked one afternoon as they walked through the golden hills that surrounded the village. Jack stopped for a moment, looking at the horizon. "Never," he answered quietly, as if the idea of leaving the village was completely foreign to his reality. "I was born here, grew up here. Everything I know is around me." Claire frowned, intrigued. Not even to see the city, to see how things work there. Jack let out a brief laugh, shaking his head. "What would I do in the city? I'm a man of the countryside. I don't have a formal education or skills that would serve me there. Besides, I've heard stories. They say the city devours people's souls." Claire observed him, thinking about how Jack's perspective seemed so distant from the life she knew. "But aren't you curious to see what's beyond these hills?" Jack looked at her, his eyes loaded with a silent wisdom. "Maybe. But life here, as difficult as it may be, is what keeps me grounded. In the city, I would just be one more, lost." Jack's words stayed with Claire, but something inside her pushed her to change that. "And if you came with me," she suddenly suggested, "you could see the city, and I could show you a bit of how things work there. Who knows? Maybe you'll discover something you never imagined." Jack laughed, but there was a hesitation in his eyes. "Do you really think I would adapt? Life in the city seems so distant for me. Everything is fast, and I'm too slow for that pace." Claire smiled, trying to soften the situation. "But you have something that many in the city don't have, Jack. Experience. Wisdom. Maybe that's more valuable than you think." He remained silent for a moment, thoughtful. "Maybe someday, but now my place is here." In the days that followed, Jack continued helping Claire with her study. Despite his initial resistance, Claire's proposal seemed to resonate in his mind. There was something about that young woman that made him question his own limits, something that pushed him to look beyond what he had always known. On a hot afternoon, while watching elephants in the distance, Jack looked at Claire thoughtfully. "Do you really think I could adapt? That there's something for me in the city?" Claire turned to him, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Yes, Jack. I believe there's something for all of us, anywhere, if we give it a chance. And if you never try, you'll never know." Jack took a deep breath, as if considering that idea for the first time. The gentle wind swayed the leaves of the trees around them, and for a brief moment, Claire felt that something had changed. He was seriously considering the proposal. The day of Claire's departure arrived, and before getting into the car, there was Jack, holding his bag with his few important belongings, ready to change his life. Dear listeners, what do you think of this story so far? We'd love to hear your thoughts. What story themes do you enjoy most? What would you like to hear next? Now let's continue with our story. Upon returning to the city, the environment was completely different from what Jack was used to. The incessant noise of cars, the accelerated pace of people, everything seemed like a disordered cacophony to him. Claire, noticing Jack's uneasiness, offered him a temporary place in her house until he found a job. "Don't worry, you can stay at my house until you find work." Jack, despite hesitating at first, accepted. He knew that finding employment in the city could take time, and being beside Claire gave him a sense of security, although the city, with its frantic rhythm, left him uncomfortable. Claire's house was small and cozy, decorated with memories of her travels and studies on wildlife. Jack, accustomed to the simplicity of the village, felt out of place in that environment. Everything seemed too modern, too technological to him. In the first days, he tried to adapt, but felt that with each step, the city was taking him further away from who he was. One night, after a long day of job hunting, Jack went to take a shower. The dusty streets and accumulated fatigue made him need that moment of calm. The bathroom, with its white tiles and gleaming mirrors, was an overwhelming contrast to the simplicity he knew in the village. He left the door ajar, not worrying too much. After all, he thought he was alone. Claire, on the other hand, had no idea what was about to happen. She was in the living room, organizing some work documents, when, as she got up to look for something in the hallway, she passed near the bathroom. The steam was coming out through a crack in the door, and unintentionally, her eyes were directed inside. And there was Jack, with his back turned, showering. Claire froze in place. The initial shock paralyzed her, but at the same time, something deeper made her stay there, observing. Jack was a strong man, and now, under the water, his figure seemed even more imposing, in addition to seeing that he was very well endowed. Drops fell down the muscles of his broad back, and Claire, unable to look away, felt something she had never felt before. Her heart accelerated and heat rose through her body. The image of Jack at that moment was intensely engraved in her mind, and she quickly moved away, feeling confused. Back in the living room, Claire sat on the sofa, trying to process what had just happened. What was that, she thought, bringing her hands to her head. The image of Jack in the shower wouldn't leave her mind, and that left her restless. She had always seen him as a dignified man, but distant, someone from a different reality than hers. However, now there was something more, a feeling that had unexpectedly arisen. The next day, still tormented by her thoughts, Claire met with her friend Sophie for coffee. She needed to vent, to tell someone what she felt, although she didn't fully understand what was happening inside her. "Sophie, I need to tell you something," Claire began, hesitant. Sophie, always attentive and understanding, leaned in her chair with a curious look. "Of course, what happened?" Claire sighed deeply before speaking. "I saw Jack bathing last night. The door was ajar and I couldn't help but look." Sophie raised an eyebrow, surprised. "And what did you feel?" "I don't know how to explain it. I was in shock, but at the same time, I can't get the image out of my head. It's as if something inside me had awakened and I can't stop thinking about it. Friend, what he has is very large." Sophie remained silent for a moment, analyzing her friend's words. "Claire, he's much older than you. Maybe you're just confused by the situation. You've been living together, and that can be influencing you." "I know, Sophie," replied Claire, frustrated, "but it's not that. It's something deeper. When I'm near him, I feel a connection, something I've never felt with anyone before." Sophie shook her head, concerned. "Just be careful, Claire. There's a big difference between attraction and real feelings. You need to understand what's really happening before doing something hasty." Claire knew Sophie was right, but even so, she couldn't ignore what she was feeling. In the days that followed, she tried to push away thoughts about Jack, focusing on her work and responsibilities. However, the discomfort grew. Each time she saw him, his imposing presence and that image returned to her mind. Meanwhile, Jack also dealt with his own difficulties. Life in the city was confusing for him. The constant noise, the lights, the crowds, none of it made sense. Day after day, he tried to look for work, but upon returning to Claire's house, he was always dirty, barefoot, not caring about the formalities of the urban environment. He ate with his hands, left clothes strewn across the living room, and brought the city's dust with him. Jack felt out of place. He heard the noise of cars in the distance and looked out the window, observing the flickering lights. It was as if he were in a place that didn't belong to him. He missed the silence of the village, the simplicity of the people, and the quiet days. But there was something about Claire that made him hesitate to return. She was different. Her kindness, her way of looking at him with a mixture of compassion and curiosity, made him feel that maybe there was something more for him in that place. He didn't know how to explain what he felt. He was attracted to Claire, that was undeniable, but there was an abyss between them. He saw in her the energy and vigor of youth, something he had lost a long time ago. Still, every time their gazes crossed, he felt a spark of something new, something that scared and excited him at the same time. One particularly quiet night, while the two were in the living room, Claire broke the silence. "Jack, are you adapting?" she asked with a tone of concern. He laughed softly. "Honestly? No, this city is not for me. Everything here is fast, noisy, and I feel out of place." Claire smiled, trying to ease the tension. "I imagined that. But you have something that many here don't have. You're strong, resilient. I think you can find your way if you want to." Jack looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe, but I don't know if this is my path. I'm a man of the earth, Claire. These lights, these sounds are not for me." Claire's heart shrank upon hearing that. She didn't want to admit it, but the idea of Jack returning to the village, of leaving her house and her life, deeply bothered her. Something inside her screamed for him to stay, but she didn't know how to deal with this new and confusing feeling that consumed her. The tension between them grew day by day, and Claire knew that soon she would have to confront her true desires. The relationship between them, although unspoken, was on the edge of a decisive moment. Days passed slowly, but the tension between Claire and Jack grew more and more. The man who previously seemed rustic and disconnected from the urban world now began to change. Claire had decided to help him adapt, to feel more comfortable in the city, and in exchange, she herself saw herself changing in ways she never imagined. "Let's cut that hair," Claire said in a playful tone, but with a touch of seriousness. Jack looked at her with a shy smile, clearly uncomfortable with the idea. "I'm not one to care about those things. What matters is hard work, not appearance," replied Jack, laughing at himself. Claire shook her head, determined. You're not in the village anymore, Jack. Here things work differently. If you want to adapt and get a good job, you need to present yourself well. Reluctantly, he followed her to the barber shop. During the haircut, Claire noticed something that made her feel a mixture of pride and sadness. With each lock of hair that fell, Jack seemed to transform, not just physically, but in a deeper way. When the barber finished, Jack almost didn't recognize himself in the mirror. His appearance was cleaner, more refined. Claire bought him new clothes, well-ironed shirts and clean shoes, replacing the sandals and worn-out pants he had been wearing since he arrived. "Now you're ready to face the world," commented Claire, feeling a wave of confusing emotions invading her heart. Jack looked at her with a glimmer of gratitude in his eyes, but also with a shadow of doubt. "I don't know if I feel comfortable like this. I'm not this man you see now." She smiled, trying to ignore the knot in her chest. "You're the man you've always been, Jack. You're just adapting. But for me, you don't need to change." Each day, Jack showed himself more adapted to the city lifestyle and soon got a simple job in a workshop. He was skilled with his hands, and his experience in manual work was quickly valued by the owners of the place. However, although he was doing well, there was something inside Jack that didn't seem to fit in that world. He did what was necessary, but his heart didn't belong to that place. That night, when Jack returned home, he looked at Claire with a serious expression. "I got a job," he said, trying to force a smile. Claire, sitting on the couch, returned the smile but felt something breaking inside her. "That's great, Jack. I'm very happy for you." He nodded, but didn't seem as enthusiastic as he should be. "I'll be moving soon. I'm already looking for a place to stay." Those words hit Claire like a punch in the stomach. The idea of Jack leaving, of not having him by her side anymore, made her realize how much he meant to her. The silence between them lengthened, only interrupted by the sound of the wind outside. Claire got up, walking slowly towards him. "Jack, I have to tell you something," she began with a trembling voice. He looked at her, surprised by the sudden seriousness in her tone. "Stay one more night with me?" she asked, with eyes full of a feeling she could no longer contain. "I can't get you out of my head, Jack. Since the day I saw you in that village, something in me changed. I try to resist, but I can't anymore." Jack, who always maintained a respectful distance, felt something break inside him. Without saying a word, he drew her to him, embracing her tightly. The intensity of that moment was almost unbearable for Claire. All the emotions she had tried to repress now emerged uncontrollably. That night, everything changed. Claire felt her heart beating strongly as she tried to understand what it meant. But as much as she wanted to believe that everything would be resolved, something deep in her heart knew that the dilemma was just beginning. In the days that followed, Jack began to realize that life in the city was not for him. He had adapted, yes. He had gotten a job, cut his hair, wore the clothes Claire had bought him. But inside, he remained the same man from the village, the one who valued simplicity, silence, and the slower pace of life. "I can't keep doing this," he confessed to Claire on a cloudy morning. "I thank you for everything you've done for me, but I don't belong in this place. I miss my village, my roots. Here, everything is too fast, everything is artificial." Claire felt panic growing inside her. "You mean you're leaving?" Her voice was low, almost a whisper. Jack felt her sad gaze, but firm. "Yes, I need to go back. I don't know who I am here, but in the village I find myself." His words hit her like a violent tide. Claire knew he was right. She knew he would never adapt to the city. But at the same time, the idea of letting him go was unbearable. She loved him. She realized that now. It wasn't just a passing attraction, it was something deep, something that made her feel alive in a way she had never felt before. And then, faced with the most difficult decision of her life, Claire had to choose. Stay in the city she loved, with her career and her planned life, or follow her heart and abandon everything to live with Jack in the village where he belonged. She took a deep breath, looked at Jack, and without hesitation said, "I'm going with you." Jack looked at her surprised. "Are you sure about this, Claire? Life in the village isn't easy. You would be giving up everything." Claire smiled, finally feeling an inner peace she hadn't felt before. "I'm sure. Nothing in the city brought me what you have brought. It doesn't matter where we are as long as we're together." And so Claire left everything behind, the city, her career, her planned life. She departed for the village, beside the man she loved, knowing that the decision she had made would lead her to a simple but fulfilling life. She knew that with Jack, she had found what she had always been searching for, the fullness that true love brings. At the end of her journey, Claire understood that true hospitality goes beyond opening the doors of a house. It's about opening the heart, welcoming those in need, offering love, care, and understanding. In Hebrews 13:2, the Bible teaches us, "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it." Claire understood that by opening her house to Jack, she not only offered shelter, but also discovered a greater purpose, a love that transformed her life. By welcoming others, we often find unexpected blessings, and it is through that act of kindness that we connect more deeply with others and with God. If you enjoyed this story, I'm certain you'll enjoy the next one showing on your screen right now. Please click on the thumbnail to watch the next story. I'd appreciate your support. Like this video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to my channel. See you in my next story. Bye.